Welcome to Holistic Hearts, a place to dive deeper into living holistically, a place where my mom shares thoughts on living fully, creating intentionally, and empowering others to come along with her in this journey.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Holistic Hearts. I am Kristen Chadwick, and today I have a very, very special guest, aka my better half, aka my best friend, Joshua, and my husband.
Don't forget that
We're
part.
legally married,
We are.
so you are my husband.
Hi.
Hi. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me on. It's been a while.
It has been a long time. Since last May or June, something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's been a bit.
it's been a bit. Yes. We survived quarantine, except now we're on round 532. So we're back at it again. Anyway,
Quarantine. Oh.
hashtag. I'm not even going to say it. Anyway, okay. Welcome.
Thanks.
Today we're going to talk about spiritual growth and what does it look like to pursue growth with your spouse. And yeah, I thought, why not have you join me? Because
We're doing that right now.
yeah.
So we're probably not experts on the subject, but
Nope.
we are walking through that process right now of how to continually grow together
Yes.
and separate.
Yep.
So we're going to talk a little bit about both of those, right?
Yeah. So if you have not heard our story, there are multiple episodes I'll tag below where Joshua was with me and we talked a lot about marriage and how to heal and walking holistically in your marriage. So I'll put those links below because it kind of gives you the backstory of us. And so there's a couple of questions that I wanted to ask, and I'm going to give it to you to take on for you to ask your spouse. So today, how, Joshua, are you pursuing your own growth in this season?
That's a good question. Well, I know we've talked about it a lot, but with really what we've learned through one of our favorite places to go in the entire world, up to the Revel Ranch. So I feel like a lot of it has stemmed out of that for me, and then being able to bring pieces of that back to my group of guys that I hang out with, and us all spurring each other on, talking about, hard stuff and, praying together. I think I've always struggled, with a quote unquote quiet time, and just making time for that. But, I feel like in this season, it's been at least a little bit better, as far as just really checking in with my own heart, and where I'm at on a daily basis. So there's that. And then, I know we're going to talk about it together, but we've been doing, identity, kind of more in-depth identity group, which is just like started to stir up more things for me, and just pursuing some more growth, and kind of thought processes that I've been stuck in for a long time. And so it's helped kind of navigate those waters as far as how to start pursuing growth in different ways, I guess would be the best way to put it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what are some of your takeaways with the coaching group?
Man, there's a lot. I think probably the biggest things are the way that I've, like I mentioned, kind of have been stuck in like old patterns. And like one of the things we talk about in one of the weeks was like lamenting that and like actually spending some time to think about like how that's really affected me throughout my entire life, and like as I'm growing out of that, like actually spending the time to like lament that dying of an old way of doing things, and a kind of a reciprocal like piece of how we learn, because it's not like a one and done kind of a thing. It's going to like continue to show its head. And so there's a lot of excavation being done right now and like what we're learning, but it's also not just, okay, I'm good now. I learned that and check the box and that's it. It's really a process through that. And so, but just the idea of lamenting before like you're moving on was just kind of a new thought for me in my own healing, my own work. Because I think like the Psalms are really, very lamenting, but we don't spend a lot of time there I think it's just part of our culture. Like we just, like we don't grieve very well. And so just learning that process, that's been a big piece.
Yeah.
A lot of the wounds of my, just my childhood and kind of where I'm at with all of those things. So, lots of really good takeaways, but I would say something new that I've learned out of all that.
That's good.
What about for you in that?
Just what am I learning in my spiritual, or how am I growing with spiritually? Yes.
You do an amazing job of you're growing in that and all that and spending the time doing it. But
yeah, I really enjoy it. So I feel like, for me, it's learning to receive without an agenda. That's been my spiritual growth, especially in this last year. Receive was one of my words, and so was breakthrough. And so in my own spiritual growth, I feel like that's a big piece of no expectation, no doing things for the sake of checking them off, because that's been my MO in the past. And like you said, there's going to be an offering to go into default mode. And for me, that can be still an offering on the table to check off things. So yeah, like you, I'm in that same identity coaching group, which feels like if you've done Heavenly Commission, my course on identity, this is like 401, level 401. And our coach, Jeff, would probably be like, no. But it is really deep work. And for me, I have to make sure that I'm intentional with sitting in that space, because it can feel disruptive and what's the word I'm trying to use? Like I can get comfortable, and then it gets uncomfortable, and then I thought I already healed from that, but it's a whole nother level. So I think for me in my spiritual growth on my own, it's going to a whole nother level of receiving and even just the simple things of just a few years ago on my identity was, it's time to use my voice, which looked a certain way then. And now it's unpacking even a deeper level of what that looks like. And not just for writing or podcasting, but even on a more eternal perspective of what that looks like.
Yeah.
So that's where I would say my spiritual growth is coming from right now. And I mean, of course, every day being able to coach people and facilitate Holy Spirit and learning so much on that. And I feel like it's a ongoing, never ending journey. So, all right. So here's
and with that, I mean, I think that's where anybody listening to this, my encouragement would be, like, it is a spectrum. It's not like you're ever arrived at any place, and there's like that cyclical process is so important to remember, that it's not like a just like if we're thinking about it as like growth, like we want to think about it as like just climbing up this straight mountain, right? And it's not always that way,
right?
Like, and so wherever you're at in that stage, there's yes, always room to grow, but just being okay with where you're at and not trying to be somewhere where you think you should be. Because I think that's, I mean, for me, and just us talking about in marriage, like, it's easy, like, to see you growing so much over the last 10 plus years, and comparing myself to where you were at, or, me comparing myself to a friend of like where they're at in their spiritual journey. And that could paralyze me a lot of the times, rather than just being okay with where I'm at, and knowing that Jesus is right there to meet me right where I'm at, rather than like this expectation that I put on myself that
right.
I need to be a certain place in that journey, at a certain time frame, or, whatever that looks like. So I guess my encouragement in that is just to be like, yes, have people that are going to spur you on and challenge you and like show you a new way.
Yeah.
But also not getting, not letting it paralyze you to do something,
right.
if that makes sense, or like
starting where you're at.
Yeah. And being okay with where you're at.
Yeah. That's good. The pressure's off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, let's talk about how are we pursuing growth together. I mean, we talked about that class, or the coaching class that we're doing together. So let's talk about that a little bit, and then we'll continue.
Yeah. Well, I would say for me, like, because even with the coaching class that we're doing together, like Monday nights, we are getting together with everybody on the call, but we haven't talked about it a whole lot. Maybe it might come up every once in a while in the conversations throughout the week. But it's not like we're diving in together
right.
on that specific thing, but it's cool to be able to do the same thing together and learn together. Even though we're on different like paths too, as far as like what we're specifically pulling away from it.
Yeah.
Which is what is cool as well, is like we can, and even with the other people in that group, like we are able to glean things from them, and the Lord gets to speak through those things.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it's been more of a like finding something that we enjoy doing together to pursue together.
Yeah.
In that growth. So you want to speak a little bit to that?
Yeah. Well, I would agree is that though we're not, coming back together on a nightly basis to discuss what's going on with our own journey in our work that we're doing, like our deep work that we're doing with identity, it still is comforting to know that there's witness, that we're both working through our own stuff. But not only that, though, I feel like we have grown a lot together by choosing to serve together in a capacity that is life-giving. It's not like a duty, like, oh, I gotta go do this, or, it's like something that we both enjoy immensely.
Right.
And that is serving on a team together up at the place that we keep talking about, Revel. So for me in this season, though we're not like sitting down having like Bible study together or having a quiet time together, knowing that we're both growing together. And then when we can come together and serve together, like we just did a retreat about a month ago or so. Yeah. And we had the opportunity to serve communion, and that was that moment right before we started serving communion, y'all. I was a mess. I was like, what is going on? And sweet Joshua was like, okay, let's just take a deep breath. And it was quite humorous though, right at the beginning, because we had a malfunction in the communion crackers and the wine or the grape juice, and it was just funny. So it was really throw you in. It was both of us going into the fire and let's go.
Yeah.
And it was powerful to serve in that capacity with you, because I felt like
it was kind of a culmination of like that growth separate,
right,
and then like coming together, and like it kind of came to this like head, if you will, of like, okay, like there has been a lot of growth. And like that was that whole weekend for me of like, like, you think that you're growing or doing the things, and then then you get put into a situation together, and it's like, okay, like I can actually see where we've made strides together, and then even and separately. So that was a good representation of that. So I mean, whatever, like that's our example of what that looks like in kind of a unique situation. But I think it's the encouragement would be to find something that where you guys, together you can serve, you can do something that you enjoy together, to kind of grow together in that capacity.
Yeah. And more power to you if it is leading a Bible study together. I don't mean to diminish that. It's just not where we were called to grow together at this moment. So I just want to put that out there. There's no right or wrong ways to serve together.
Yeah, exactly.
God is so much bigger than what we could imagine, like that, in that capacity of who knew that in that moment of time, it was a touch point for both of us to see our growth together and to be able to really see the growth in each other. So I think that, so there was that. And then we are also growing together through our marriage group. And these people are our lifelong friends. They've been with us since the beginning of our marriage. And So I think growing together as a community in the capacity of our marriage has been a breath of fresh air, I think, for us. We've been using the Dan Allender series, and it's so good and so meaty, which has been great. It's been refreshing because I feel like even in the last year, it's been one of those coast along times where it's we'll talk about deeper things when we have the extra energy.
Yeah, or even, I mean, thinking about having date nights in quarantine, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just all the little things of like those touch points and connections. It's just looked different over this last year. And I want to point out too, like, so Kristen and I's personality, which is really funny because we're talking on your podcast, like in that group, like we're not the leaders of that group,
No.
right? So we sit back and we're continuing to learn to use our voice, and Kristen has done a really great job of that and just speaking up where needed. But I guess my point in all of that is like you might find different avenues that you really are like hitting on all cylinders together. Mm-hmm. And there might be other like situations where it might be kind of you're kind of in the background a little bit more, but the most important thing is like those conversations. Yeah. Like we have great conversations before and after, like just because it's brought up things and we're, talking through things. So the car ride home ends up being us, processing everything together and just talking through, whatever it was that we were talking about that night. So, in that way as well, like it's more about the pursuit together than it is about the specific thing or how you're showing up or like making it happen in that space. It's like doing it together will provide opportunities to grow together.
Yeah. I totally agree. That commonality of doing something together and
And specifically in the idea of growth of spiritually, right? Or in your marriage,
right?
Like spending that time, because there's a lot of things that we do together, especially in quarantine, just life in general, right? Yeah. But it's that pursuit of trying to grow again apart and then together.
It's being intentional with your choices of growth.
Right.
And you married a very hungry person for growth, so I'm sorry.
Make up for it for both of us. It's all good.
Well, I hope that this inspires you to be able to take these two questions of how are you pursuing your own growth and how are you pursuing it together, and ask these questions to your spouse. I think it could spark an interesting conversation. And I preface this with one of the episodes that we did together. We talked about staying in your own lane and letting go of expectation of where each other is at.
Yeah, that's good.
That you bring that posture into that conversation of there's no judgment of where the other person is at, and what are you doing on your own to pursue growth. And because I think that's just key. Like no matter what the other person is doing, whether they are on a strong pursuit of spiritual growth or if they're burned out, numb, whatever, ultimately you are in charge of you. You are in charge of your own growth, and with the help of the Holy Spirit and his beckoning you. And just laying that down and just being curious for knowing your spouse even more. So anything else you want to add to that?
I think, it's hard to know the spectrum of people that are listening to this as well, because there might be somebody listening that their spouse is not pursuing anything, right? And so I guess my only additional encouragement in that would be, so yes to everything you just said as far as pursuing it for yourself, but finding common ground would be a place to at least start, of like, if it's not, serving together at church or, a retreat like we do, or like going to a, Bible study, couples Bible study, or marriage group or whatever. Like, if it's not that, then maybe it's just a, secular book that you guys are, but it has a theme of some sort of growth, connection, like, similar threads that would be non-threatening. But so I think it's just that common ground, because, inevitably, and I was in that space for a long time where you were growing and I kind of felt stuck, or just not like I just didn't feel like I wasn't in a great place spiritually for a long time. And so, those would have been harder things to do in that time frame, but it's that commonality of like, okay, what are we doing together? What kind of conversations? How are we pursuing something together? And permission to start small. As well. Like, it doesn't have to be something mind blowing or in our example, that was just an example of where we're at right now.
Right.
So just, no pressure, no judgment of where you're at together, but it's just so important to pursuing that connection together, on some sort of heart level.
Because the whole point is going back to the whole theme of this year of wholehearted, and just going after all of our hearts, and that the spiritual growth is the foundation of wholeheartedness. So loving the other person exactly where they're at is definitely key. So
that's good.
All right, well, thanks for joining me again.
Yeah, it's fun.
I'm going to have you back again. I think that you should come back on and do an encounter. What do you say?
Well, I'm doing one for this next retreat, so
we should just record it.
Just have to record it and throw it up.
Don't throw it up.
Okay.
But, record it.
Record it and then put it on your podcast.
There you go.
Okay.
Deal.
All
right. Love you. Thank you.
Love you too. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Holistic Hearts. As always, leave a review and don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. And if you'd like to find out more about my mom and all the things she is writing about, go to www.kristenfieldschadwick.com.